Hi, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Gloria Hollins. I'm the administrative assistant here at Real Women in Trucking, and I am so happy to present to you my meeting with Michelle Kitchens, board member for Real Women in Trucking. Michelle, will you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Michelle Kitchen. I've been driving since 1988. Right now, I haul Michigan to California and back. I haul office furniture out and produce, most of the time, produce back to Michigan. And then I take my 34 at home. So I'm out, about 8, 9, 10 days. Don't have to do laundry on the road anymore.
That's got to be nice. So you started trucking in 1988. I was about 7 when that happened. So what got you into trucking?
I don't think there was a defining moment. I know my uncle when I was little, or my mom's uncle, he used to stop by once in a while. He'd park in the driveway and it was a big deal. But when I was in college, and I really, my life goal was forensics for the state police. And I was in college and I applied for state police and all that stuff. And then the state I live in, Michigan, declared bankruptcy, canceled all their next academies and everything. And I just kind of had to get a job, and then I kind of got over that, and I just started doing it. There wasn't any real moment, really.
Okay, all right. So you happened upon trucking because your dream was unfortunately deferred, and that's a horrible thing to have happen, but now you're here in trucking. So you've been a trucker since the 80s, and even in the 80s, there was not a lot of female truckers. Can you tell me about what it was like being a trucker in the late 80s, early 90s?
Well, I was the only one. I went to a 4-week truck driving school. They called it a school. It was different. I was the only one there, the only female there. I was the only one that could already drive a stick shift. Those guys were a mess. And then I had my dad passed away, so I had to leave in like halfway through the 4th week. And after that, I applied at a couple places, and a couple places that were at the school came in. One of them I dodged a bullet, and the other one, they were both mega carriers. I went with one. They had a really good training program. They are no longer in existence like they were then, but they did have owner operators there that had some male, female, mostly husband, wife. She didn't do a lot of driving, a lot of logbook. So I was one of the very few there too at the mega company. And I was one of their first female trainers. There was very few places that had showers for women. A lot of the shippers, receivers, you'd have to go ask to use maybe their secretaries or the front office bathrooms, and they kind of give you a look, but they'd let you do it. Actually, more so than they have since COVID. But the truck stops evolved. Equipment has evolved. It's way easier. Equipment's a million times easier than it was. It used to be a real super physical job, and now it's more mental. There's more traffic, more I mean, population density is just higher, and so even though the equipment's got easier and the facilities have gotten nicer, it's a double-edged sword because there's not enough parking, and we just always have something going on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you uplifted the fact that for your for the carrier that you went to and trained with, you became their first female trainer. And one of the conversations being had specifically within Real Women in Trucking are the conditions that women that are entering the industry can encounter. Bathrooms being the least of those, assault and harassment being the most severe of those. And one of the things that's being suggested as a solution is same-sex trainers. So do you feel as a female trainer that in the current industry, do you think that that's a good idea?
It depends on the how the company is training the trainers. So even back when I was a trainer, when I trained, I was trained by a male trainer. He was a great trainer. I trained both males and females. I trained whoever was next in line. We didn't have, but we also had, and we didn't have cell phones. We did test Qualcomm. So we did have that in our trucks that fleets didn't have before, and we were a test fleet for them. So we did have an emergency button, but we had train the trainer meetings. We had train the trainer classes. We had the trainee had direct phone numbers to different people in the company. I had direct phone numbers, and we had like a safety department that like would take each of us privately when we come into the terminals and talk, and they'd grade the trainers and the trainees. So we were held accountable. They just don't do that anymore. I don't even know if companies have safety people anymore, really, because they get all this data off the truck.
Right.
So there's no need for the safety people that we had before, and they're not going to employ somebody if they don't have to, you know. So I think it's worse now, to be honest, because there's a rush to get people through. We have social media that doesn't help either side sometimes. You know, it's very I don't really know a good term, but people aren't as proud to be in this industry. They're more like, well, I heard you could make a lot of money, and I heard this and I heard that. I don't meet very many people anymore that are like, man, I've always wanted to do this because because it's in my heart, you know. So I think we need to get back. Like if a college football team or whatever has been losing for years, they go back to the basics. They go all the way back to the basics and they start over. And that's really what the training program should be. The Federal Motor Carrier, if they're going to be the rule makers, they should sit down with people and say, look, we have to do this because, besides the discrimination and rape, and there's so many bad habits, and there's so many, I want to say, coercion of truck owners to drivers, that it's not safe out here just to drive a car, anything.
Yeah, no, I in speaking with all of you ladies and learning more. So I came into this, of course, I assumed a lot of things to be true about truckers. I've always had, so I appreciate trucks. I do. I think they're amazing. You guys are wonderful for what you do. There are so many products and things that would not physically be in my home if it weren't for truckers. However, as someone, so I live in Northeast Alabama, and you occasionally go to Tennessee or you go to Georgia, you go by the highway system. So as a driver, I'm always cognizant of where, like, I try not to travel in the early morning hours to not be in the trucker's way. I try not to travel in poor driving conditions in general, because I don't, I have respect for the truckers. You guys already have a hard enough time, and you don't want to deal with whatever stupid driving I may be doing because I'm in a rush or I'm in a hurry or I'm not paying attention. And
And
so it's been very interesting to learn that the training doesn't necessarily keep me as a consumer safe, so that I can buy more of the things that you guys transport. And so I've learned that at you guys' feet, and it's actually astounding to know that training varies based on not only the carrier that you're with, but the trainer that you get, and then how well that particular trainer was trained. And I
yeah,
think that's interesting. Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, if the carrier doesn't take training seriously, it's just trying to fill a seat. If they're getting government subsidy and payment from a student, they don't have any, what's the consequence of poor training? There is no consequence to poor training because they're self-insured. So there's really no consequence. And I mean, to put it in perspective, you have to have 2 years of training to cut somebody's hair, do their nails. Most states, take a test, get licensed, pay for a license every year. There is no requirement for truck drivers for training. So up until this last year, they've passed some that are basically meaningless. A little bit, not enough, too late. Doesn't focus on the problem because they didn't go back to the beginning. You can't bring in so many people that, the United States is the only country that doesn't use the metric system. So all our bridges and speed limits and everything are not metric. And anybody that, you could live, I don't know, the metric system is hard for me to learn. So if you come here and you lived here for 5 years and you decide to drive a truck and you qualify and all that, do you know our numbering system? Do you know how high that bridge is? Do you know how much weight that bridge is going to take? Do you know what those speed limit signs mean? Why would you have learned that? Nobody was requiring you to. Nobody's asking you to. Federal motor carrier doesn't care until you hit a bridge. And then it's like, what are you doing? Why don't you know your truck's 13.6? Well, they do, but they know it in metric and they don't know what the bridge height is in the Dewey system. So, so you add all these things up and you just put them in a truck because they got a driver's license.
That's frightening. So it gets more and more scary the more I hear it, because there's just so many variables for what could possibly happen. And we want truckers to be safe. I just saw something the other day about how a historical bridge was ruined because the trucker didn't know how. And it just baffles me, like you said, that you have to go through very rigorous training to do something as simple as cut someone's hair, but you don't to get on a truck. Now, they are lowering the federal driving age for truckers to 18. How do you feel about that?
Well, the argument is, we let our kids go to in the military at that age. But again, the military, they have guidance, they have rules. They're watched very carefully. So that's not a really good argument. I do know, I have in my lifetime known people that are mature enough to do it at 18.
Right.
But as a group, ask the insurance companies. They will tell you that people of certain ages are not safe.
Right.
So did they ask insurance? Because insurance runs a lot of this stuff out here, that they are the ones that are clawing at people's wallets,
Right.
So I don't understand how I even got this far.
Right. No, I get it. Well, the idea was, and again, this is where you guys teach me things that change the perception of the headline or change the perception of the piece of legislation that I have a foundational understanding of. So we're facing a trucker shortage, but we don't really have, from you guys, I'm learning we don't really have a trucker shortage per se. And so they're trying to get this influx of truckers. I also read an article maybe in the last week or so where the ATA was deciding that women are the avenue for trucking. So here's what's going to happen. They're going to throw more federal dollars, of course, to attract these people to come to these mega carriers, and they're not going back to the basics. So in terms of training and going back to the basics, in your opinion, what does a good training involve?
So first of all, you have to have a safety department, right? You have to have train the trainer classes for the prospective trainers. The prospective trainers have to have good background checks, good driving history with your company, a few years experience. I would like to say 5, but I want to be realistic also that there are people that, I mean, I was training about 2.5 years in, but I came from a farm and I did grasp it quick. So there are good instructors, but still, I think if you want to be serious about it, then you have to train that trainer. And that has to include classes with HR. They need to be trained. There has to be, you have to have guidelines. And then you also have to, I mean, the government requires, the federal motor carrier requires 10-year background history checks on your driver employees, right? Mm-hmm. So do this and do it honorably and hire those people you want representing your company. Not to say there can't be second chance people, but when you get up to your felonious murders and rapes, I think that you have to honestly say, listen, you know, you can't go in a truck with another person. Mm-hmm. I don't even know if you should go in the truck, but and you have to touch base, you have to communicate. That's one of the big things is if the company knows they have good trainers and they've trained good trainers, mm-hmm. then they're already halfway there, right? And if they do good quality background checks on the people coming in, instead of just looking and going, oh, they got a pulse, let's see if they can pass a drug test and we'll get them out of here. And you know, and that's where this driver shortage stuff comes in, is because it's a churn. It's a steady churn. You lose some, well, we're losing more and more every day to the legalization of marijuana. Okay, because we are still under a random drug program, and as we probably should be, but they didn't look to the future when, like, Colorado was toying with this quite a few years ago, and then they passed it. And I think there's lots of institutions in our government that should have gone, hey, this might affect us. And that is going to, I think personally, that's going to create a shortage in the future. Because if I can go right now and get a cookie to relax and legally, right, and I have that choice, and then work right now, especially when these places are hiring for like $36 an hour down the street and don't care about my drug habits, I can pay my mortgage on that. You know, I'm home every day. Those are the choices that are going to be started to be made, because we have so many rules and regulations that are not pertinent to our job, that they were made with special interest group consideration, all kinds of things. I mean, we haven't even really had anybody leading the federal motor carrier because nobody will, you know, confirm anybody. It's like, we haven't had anybody. We didn't have anybody through COVID. We had no direction. We have nothing, no direction, but we got rules, but we got no direction.
Now, you're speaking of the rules and the federal motor carrier, which is the extension of the DOT, which is the U.S. Department of Transportation, that deals in trucking and transport. And you guys haven't had any leadership?
We had President back, 45. We had Mitch McConnell's wife, Elaine Chao, was head of transportation with with issues. That's going off a politic thing, but
no, we're not going to talk about the politics of
no,
it. We're just going to talk about let's focus on the issue.
Yeah, and she did get Martinez, it was his name, Ray Martinez, I believe. She got him confirmed, and he was there, and he came to the Matt's truck shop, truck show in Louisville, I think, and there was quite a few drivers let him have it in an open forum. I wasn't there. I understand it got a little heated. He came to another one, and soon after he resigned, and ever since then, it's just been a steady churn of deputies taking that spot, deputies taking that spot. We finally had a decent one, couldn't get it confirmed. She took another job because nobody showed any interest in making confirmation hearings, and I think we're still in limbo on the next one. So yeah, it's been about 4 or 5 years now since we've had any leadership. Okay. But we still can get tickets.
Right.
We can still pay fines.
Right. You're still subject to the laws, but there's no one.
Yeah, we still have to follow all the rules. We just don't have a fearless leader here to help us out.
So what without talking about the politics, because we could go there, we really could go there, and there's a great deal that I could say, and we're just not going to do that because that's not what this is about, and we really want to focus on the issue. But as a trucker who is subject to these conditions, not only subject to the conditions, but subject to guidance by the federal motor carriers, which I forget, I think it was FMCSA or something like that is the acronym, the acronym, and I get it confused all the time. But what do you think would make a good what qualifications, not who, because that can get partisan, but what qualifications do you think are necessary to put a good leader in place so that you guys are able to, because that's your liaison between the truckers on the road and U.S. Department of Transportation. So what do you think would make a good, what qualifications do you think would make a good, strong leader?
Well, I don't think they should be a politician. They shouldn't be a lifetime politician. They should have in their background some transportation, whether it's buses, trucks, train, something in large urban area or multiple state areas, highway departments, something that allows them the experience of both being on the road as part of their job, maybe, so that they understand the travel part of it, how it's not easy, not just the driving part, but the family and the friends and the hotels, or however, just being away and making schedules, keeping schedules, and somebody that even if they don't have, if they're not a truck driver, which I don't know that any of them's ever been a truck driver, they're willing to listen, not just to special interest. I mean, they can, because they have to know both sides,
right?
But they have to be able to decide they have to understand our truth versus the truth of the special interest. You know, our truth about, I don't know, the DEF system that's on our truck. The truth to the drivers is a major pain in the butt. It's expensive. I mean, it's finally come around where it's not a big deal on these trucks. They finally got it honed in, but we were like guinea pigs when the government said, put these on because we need to clean up the atmosphere and all this. And I don't disagree with that. That's going back into politics. But why were we guinea pigs? Why didn't they have to have this thing down and done the research and then put it in? The same with the ELDs. Why special interest group swayed this decision, and nobody ever checked with the driver. Nobody ever checked the hours of service with the drivers. Nobody ever checks, you know, why I have 34, almost, I'm getting ready to hit 35, 34 years of, I've never been in an accident. I haven't had a ticket in like 15 or 16 years. And that was my personal car. And I was speeding, but, you know, why do I have to follow the same rules as somebody that just got out of school a week ago?
That's a good question.
I mean, that limits my opportunity to make money.
Right.
Because my money is based on.
There should be these conditions apply to maybe a driver that's in their first 5 years. And
Well,
then.
So we have these things that attach to our windshield, pre-pass, or there's different styles of it. Most everybody will know what a pre-pass is when I say that. And pays your tolls. And when you hit the scale, they have, if you notice at a weigh station on the highway, they have these overhead things that look like cameras. So it hits our thing and it has information in that box that goes into that scale. And so that tells them the company, the truck that it's registered, so their DOT number. So mine, for instance, is the company I work for. And so that makes all of us responsible for keeping that CSA number down so that we can get green lights and never have to go through a scale. Why can't they make me an individual one that does the same thing, and I have to upgrade it with my driver's license? So then if I've been in 3 or 4 accidents, that thing's going to read that, and I should be keeping this style logs, or I should be doing this, or, you know, I don't want to have to pay for it. I'm not trying to encourage government. Less government is better, but if you're already doing this, do it to our advantage.
Okay. But doesn't that go back to the fact that you guys don't really have anybody with your interest in mind, nobody that really understands? Because as I've sat into these conversations, there's data that I would ask for that just seems like common sense data that you would have. For example, we'll switch over. I was looking at highway safety information, which I can find highway safety information, but really getting down to the nitty gritty of how many wrecks involving, say, 18-wheelers were conducted by drivers freshly out of trucking school versus drivers who were in their training program. There's not that kind of information that exists. And that's largely in part because nobody is advocating for these things to be available. Is it private interests? That gets into politics, and we could talk about dark money all day long. And we're just not going to have that conversation. We're going to ignore the fact that my ring light has decided to poop out on me and let it be gone so that my hair is not as blue as it was. But we're going to transition over a little bit and talk about your decision to align with Real Women in Trucking. Because I think that since there is not federal advocacy on your behalf, when you lack federal advocacy, I'm a strong supporter of grassroots advocacy. And that is what Real Women in Trucking is trying to do. That's what Real Women in Trucking, all of you wonderful ladies, do on a day-to-day basis. So tell me, how did you become involved with Real Women in Trucking?
Well, I mean, I was pretty excited to see social media. You're able to find groups and stuff, and it was pretty exciting. There was a group that came out before ours, and I actually was a member there. And I happened to be down because I live in Michigan, so I go to Matt's probably every 4 or 5 years. And so I was at Matt's one year, and they were there, and they threw me a t-shirt and something else. And this one girl goes, I heard them talk, and they were sitting at a table. They were part of the leadership of this organization. And they're like, they were talking about if the president was going to show up, and if she did, who could talk to her and who couldn't talk. And I'm like, wait, what? And so I just kind of didn't do anything with my membership. I thought it was kind of weird, right? So then I was just like, wonder what else is going on out here. So I found these guys, right? And Desiree actually called me on my phone and introduced herself. And I'm like, wow, that's different than the other group, because we were supposed to like kiss the crown or something over there. And I wasn't doing that. And she was driving a truck. She was a truck driver. And I'm like, really? Wow. And so I just sat in some meetings, and I like the direction. You know, there's a lot of religion, a lot of politics, a lot of things that get people stirred up, and there's things that happen out here that we're such a male dominated industry that anything that we talk about, you know, there's a big percentage of people that are like, well, if you don't like it, don't be a truck driver. You know, even the women. If you don't like it, if you can't handle it, that's really not, that doesn't create progress. You have to change things. You can't just go someplace else because you don't like it. You know, I mean, and sometimes you do in life, you go to a different store because you don't like that store, whatever. But there's certain, I mean, this is a whole industry.
Right.
We can't just, you shouldn't be driving a truck if you can't handle it. Well, why can't I handle it? It's not because of the trucking. It's not because of the job. It's because of the lack of leadership in our industry, lack of groups that aren't special in, you know, the money. I mean, there's some big money groups out here, but they don't advocate. They recruit drivers. That's what they do. They're recruiting into a bad system.
Okay. Understandable. And I think that I think it's very shrewd to point out that there are federally funded private interest groups that are working against the messaging and the conditions that you all are trying to push. We don't name names and we don't get specific because, again, we are focused on the issue itself.
Issues, yes.
Because the issue, at the end of the day, the issue is it's the 21st century, and everyone, for all of the ways that we are different, has the right to exist as differently as they are. And in terms of workplaces, there are certain things that are zero tolerance. And it boggles the mind that there are some workplaces where these things, where the public perception is, oh, well, if you can't handle it, get out. No, that's not the way to be, because that's not creating an inclusive or more progressive world for all of us to live in. Because the reality is if you brave ladies didn't step up and do your job, we'd be how many more truckers short. if we continue to allow these conditions to exist, how many more women are going to be victimized in the ways that they've been victimized, which actually, we don't even talk about that. And you guys don't really talk about it as much as you should. So I'm going to put it out there. When we talk about rape and sexual assault and the workplace violence and harassment that women experience in the trucking industry, that actually has a ripple effect on the entirety of society. Because what happens when this woman develops mental health issues or physical health issues in some very extreme cases and is unable to, then you have no choice but to be dependent on whatever social services may or may not be available. And so we have an opportunity to stave off a larger problem by just solving this small problem and doing exactly what Michelle said, going back to the basics. So I really appreciate that you uplift it from that perspective. I know it's so hard to not get into the politics and
Well,
the naming
I
of the
mean,
things.
the Roe versus Wade decision to our industry.
Mhm.
You're with somebody for 2 weeks and you're raped and you get thrown off the truck and you don't have a job. You owe for this truck driving school that you got put through. They're
Absolutely.
sending lawyers after you. They want their money, right? But you're not employed there, and now you're pregnant with somebody that you didn't know.
Right.
And you happen to have a driver's license in a state that
has restrictive reproductive rights.
yes,
We're gonna say.
very nice. So, I mean, so even decisions that are outside the realm of what people think is going on in this industry is big for us. I mean, we already don't have any allowance for women that are pregnant, that need time off, medical time off. You don't, if the wheels don't turn, you don't earn. So we
Wait
don't
a minute.
have,
Wait.
no, we don't have,
FMLA doesn't apply to you all?
we do, some companies do have FMLA. Yeah. My company does. I don't know really what is inclusive in that, because it doesn't pertain to me. It didn't at the time when I even took it. So, because I'm old, but there's a lot of companies that don't provide child services, pregnancy service. A lot of companies don't. I mean, we have organizations out here to transport bodies of people that have died or have been killed in trucks, because these companies aren't paying for that. There shouldn't be that organization. They're a great organization, but we shouldn't need them, right?
Right, because it's a multi-billion-dollar industry.
Somebody's on a
Yeah.
yacht right now, and somebody else is having to raise money to get somebody home that passed away because they had tried to get home to see their family doctor and they couldn't get them home. And I mean, we had a lady in our organization that got sick out on the road. And so, there was a whole bunch of us. We would have gone, got her truck. We would have taken vacation time at our companies, gone, got her truck, gone, got her whatever she needed. She did get home and stuff, but she was a lease operator. She had no insurance. And really, she was already sick because she didn't have insurance. So, she let it go. And that happens a lot. There's 1099 companies out here. There's no insurance. There's people that throw 1099 out there because there's a lot of guys that don't want to pay child support. That's a big reason for 1099. Plus, the employer doesn't have to pay Social Security taxes and benefits of any sort. So the whole industry, pretty much of it's bad. I mean, if you don't do your research before you look at this ad that says you can make $60,000 your first year, if you don't do your research, you probably won't make it.
Can we talk about employee-driven debt? Because I had a really interesting conversation with Jess Graham about the whole lease owner. So I've seen the trucking ads that come to trucking school, you'll make used to be 65 to 85,000 used to be great money, but now you're seeing, you know, upwards of 100,000 plus is what they're saying that you can make. What they're leaving out are the terms and conditions of being a lease operator. So tell me a little bit about what you know about that and give me your thoughts on that.
So if you're a lease operator, you are just paying for the company's equipment. You're buying their fuel, you get anything that happens to that truck, all the maintenance, everything, you're paying for it. What are the odds of you actually owning that truck? They're slim, because your money is coming from the same people that sold you the truck, right? So
Right.
they can make you or break you.
Mm-hmm.
You might be a dog person and they might be a cat person.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys don't like each other from the get-go over the phone, and they can break you. This person that is going to college, probably in their junior or senior year of college, needs a full-time job doing data entry, sitting behind that computer giving you loads, but they don't really like you because, you know, you're an Alabama fan and I'm a Michigan State fan, and here we go. So they
War
pick and
Eagle, by the
choose.
way. War Eagle. We are Auburn fans over here, but whatever. I digress.
Okay. So they pick and choose their freight. This person that doesn't, the person that dispatches, especially in these big companies, they don't have any ownership in this company. They're getting paid by the hour to be a dispatcher or a load board monitor or whatever, mentor. Well, I don't know what they call them. They're different at everyone, but they're the ones that are giving you the load. So you bring them their favorite beef jerky from all these places out here every week when you come in the yard, then guess who's getting the good loads? And when they tell you that women make the same amount of money as men, of course they do on paper. So if I start at 60 cents a mile and so does Joe Blow start at 60 cents a mile, that's what we start at. Mm-hmm. That is comparative. And then the person dispatching is secretly dating Joe, and Joe's paying her rent, and Joe's getting these good loads, and he's making like, you know, $100,000 a year. And Michelle, she's not dating her dispatcher and she doesn't care if she pays her rent. And so she gets crap freight and makes $60,000 a year. But we're getting paid the same amount, yes.
But you're not getting the same.
But we're not getting
not equitable opportunity.
There's no, these dispatchers, especially at the mega company, they don't have a horse in the race here. They don't care if you own that truck. What they care about, their bonuses come from how many loads they move, how many loads don't get lost, how much damage isn't done. You know, they have boards with a bunch of drivers on their board, and they want the most miles on that board, but they also get their bonuses. Like, they got to talk some of these drivers into doing these crap loads, which, you know, I've always been, you know, you got to do a crap load to get a good load. That's the way I came into the industry. So I get that, but not to break me. That was to make me. My dispatcher would give me great loads if I did her a favor, which might have been a rail load or go load at Anheuser or something, you know, some crap that didn't pay me squat, but the next load was tremendous and paid me a lot. So, but that was before the ELDs and everything, and we could run, and it was pay to play out here. You know, you get stopped in the scale and you paid the ticket and you went on, or you gave them some watermelons to get the weight off and you filled their trunk up, and that's what you did. And you can't do that now, and that's okay too, because I don't want to work that hard anymore. But it's not equal. There's nothing equal out here between a man, a woman, or even a giraffe. I mean, you can put whatever you want in this truck and there's no equality because it's based on freight. So you have to hustle. And when people come into the industry, they don't understand that there's a hustle that goes out here. You know, if you want to make good money, if you want to be a good owner operator, you got to hustle. And if you're a lease operator, you can make it, but you got to hustle. And you don't get to eat in the restaurant every night. And you don't get, you know, you ask friends for showers and you don't pay for parking. And those are, you know, that there's a hustle to that too. And I know two people that have completed, and one of them's doing spectacularly. She set her mind to it and has done it. And she's a member of Real Women in Trucking. But she's one of the very few that it was a hustle and she knew it. But when you lease this equipment and it's based like let's use, I don't know, Prime. Their trucks are set at like 58 or 60, whatever their mileage is. So if you're going to go lease, so say a truck is $180,000, right? So you're going to go buy a Maserati convertible and you don't want to buy it, you want to lease it. So you get to the dealership and they got your car all prepped for you, right? And then the guy tells you, well, you can only put the top down on Wednesdays and Sunday mornings. You can't go over 62 miles an hour. You can only drive it a few hours a day. I need you to get gas at certain gas stations. Would you lease that? Would you lease that Maserati?
No, but you just took all the fun out of it.
So why would you lease a truck where they control the speed? They control the fuel. They control the freight. They control everything.
But they don't tell you that up front. Like they don't, the advertisements, and I can speak to seeing advertisements and how advertising works, because the idea is to move you to an action. Advertising is nothing but a call to action. So I understand that side of it. I just, I guess I would assume, and again, every time I make an assumption in the world of transportation as it pertains to trucking, I always become the first three letters of the word assume. So I'm probably going to risk doing that again, but I would assume that when you sit down, those contracts are explained to you point by point, and I'm guessing that they're not, but they are still legally binding because you've now signed, initialed, dotted I's and crossed T's. But that was more of the interesting part of the conversation that I was having with Jess, because the way my understanding of it is essentially the lease owner model is an MLM. The trucking company makes all the money, the trucker makes nothing. And they're down here at this bottom percentage. And it's kind of like, personally, I don't like MLMs. For the people that are listening that you've had tremendous success with that, congratulations to you. But that's just not a model of business that I find to personally be attractive. But I'm also a person who was taught to read everything that's put in front of me before I sign it. I feel like the industry capitalizes on the fact that there are people who either need that second chance, educationally didn't perform as well as others, and exploits those qualities in people so that they can continue to bolster their pockets. And it's really disappointing because with the amount of money that they make, again, there's so many things that could be better, but I'm going to go on a limb and say that they invest their money in private interests, which keep you guys locked out. Again, we're not going to get into the politics, but I'm going to create the whole experience for those people that don't.
What it does is, what the whole lease operation does is it takes the responsibility off the company. If you go back and you go to one of the big delivery services, they had a driver cross the median in California and hit a college bus full of I want to say Swimmers, but I can't remember. It's been a few years. It was up on Highway Interstate 5, I believe, or 9, up in the valley. And when it came down to it, it was a contracted truck. And so this major company had no responsibility. That was their argument, right? So now you got these other big companies, and I'm not going to name their name, but they're blue trailers, you know, and everybody wants their stuff tomorrow that they're ordering right now. They're doing the same thing. They're almost all 100% contractors. They do have some of their own trucks. I don't know how their business model is just kind of mimicking somebody else's out there, a couple people. So they take all of the responsibility off of the company and they put it on the truck owner. And then if the truck owner has multiple trucks and hires people, that's when they 1099 these drivers, because this person that owns the truck, he's not making hand over fist. Now he's making money, right?
Yeah,
but he still has to pay a driver. So he's gonna do the very least he can for that driver also, right? Because this big company's doing the least they can do for this truck owner. Right. So it's a chain that has the driver being responsible not only for the federal motor carrier rules, but you know, remember that incident in Colorado that the guy came down the mountain, okay, so he was in that accident, and he was Cuban, and I've been to Cuba. They don't have any mountains. They don't have trucks, nothing like that. So as responsible as he is as an adult, his employer
should have been, but because of the structure,
right, we have no leadership to check. A lot of the companies don't get checked by the federal motor carrier and the CSA points until after a big incident, either a newsworthy accident that, you know, kills a comedian and maims another one, or, you know, that's when the federal motor carrier steps in, because we don't have any leadership. We've never really had, I mean, Secretary Pete is the closest thing that we've ever had to somebody that actually cares. And he's still way up higher than we need. We need somebody in our industry, but until we get, we're still going to have these people, because it's a ripple effect with the driver on the bottom being solely responsible for not only the freight, the people's lives. I mean, we're responsible for everything. And here we are at the bottom of this thing of pay, and we're actually at the top of the supply chain, because without us,
nothing gets done.
So somehow this got flipped. And we're being held at the bottom, when in all actuality, if you take us out of the mix, you guys got nothing, zero. Nobody's got anything. And the next person that says put it on a train.
Yeah, trains don't really, you have to get, so I worked for a transportation company, and so they would get the big containers that would come over to the ports. Yes, you could put them on a train, but how are they going to get from the train station to where they need to go?
And how fresh is your produce?
Ew, I don't even want to think about that. That's scary. Yeah, because trains are not, I mean, and trains like that, they don't run the way they used to when trains first became a thing.
Well, and they're overwhelmed. And you can go past any train and you can see who's utilizing them for their advantage and who's not. And it's a lot of the empties are going back out to the ports. That's the best utilization, because they don't have to pay a driver for an empty trailer. But you still have to pay the train. I mean, this stuff isn't free, and unless you got a train track behind your house, you're not going to get your overnight package you just ordered. It's just not going to happen. So we should not be at the bottom of the pole as far as pay goes, and as far as workplace hostility and violence and discrimination. And I mean, just nobody has any interest. The interest comes and goes, and it be one day, it's a big thing. And then the next day it's like, if you don't like it, why are you doing it?
Okay, well, that leads me to, ordinarily, I would ask you more questions about real women in trucking and advice that you have for new truck drivers, specifically women. But you've given me a lot. So I'm going to ask a better question. And of course, I just lost my train of thought. Darn it, I hate when I do that. Okay, so in regard to pay, no, I know what the question was. You are speaking, consider yourself speaking to consumers, because again, not getting political, but understanding the process of politics. You have to galvanize bodies of people to sway decisions. And so I'm now here hearing you truckers, and I'm hearing you amplify your voices. When I was an everyday consumer, I didn't hear that. So if you were speaking to the everyday consumer who is completely unaware, we know that you guys get our goods back and forth. We know to teach our kids to do the pull thing. What would you want us to do to help improve the conditions that you work under?
I think the everyday public, I think all of us need to get back to away from this point A to point B in our vehicles, and we go as fast as we can, and we're doing stuff. And I know I got nieces and nephews, I know this whole transportation thing has changed, and we need to get back so we're safe and they're safe. And then at the same time, we need to remind truck drivers that yes, cars do make us mad. They do silly things, but we're the trained professionals. Mm-hmm. So we don't just get to run over them because they made us mad. We just, complain about it to our friend that's also a driver or whatever. And, your few choice swear words. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes you pull the bighorn, but that doesn't change, that doesn't change my day. What changes my day is when a truck does something that I've seen cars do. Mm-hmm. And we need to switch that around, and we need the public to help us. We need to switch it so that the trucks are leading by example, slowing down in construction. Because with all the construction, everybody knows somebody that's working in construction. Mm-hmm. Right now. Just don't kill them. I mean, where do you got to be? And I think the trucks are leading the charge the wrong way, and we need to go back. And then the public, I would hope that they had a really good opinion of us during COVID. What they didn't know was that there were small organizations like ours, and we had some really cool sponsors that sent us stuff so that we could hand out packages, because we had no leadership and we didn't have any PPE. We didn't have anything out here, but we were still working. Everybody else was at home. I mean, it was the nicest 5 or 6 months ever on the highway.
Because everybody was
gone.
Yeah.
So I think I think the general public, I think we don't leave our houses or get up in the morning at truck stops thinking we're going to kill somebody, or thinking we're going to be in an accident. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, neither do you.
Right.
But what do you do in your car that you shouldn't do, and you shouldn't? And people are doing the same thing in trucks, and we all need to take a big deep breath. Mm-hmm. And watch those numbers on those overhead signs that are saying how many people are getting killed every year in a car. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's crazy. We have all these safety features, and that number just keeps going higher and higher. And it's because we aren't, I don't know what we're not doing. We're not thinking that this is going to kill us. We're thinking we're in a Mario Kart game or something, you know, and we're just going to bounce off the wall and flip over and drive on, and we're not. Somebody's going to get killed. And I think the public, I think some of the big organizations that have a lot of money, they should get the billboards. They should get the billboards out, and they should get all of us to drive safe, to help the states and stuff, and quit. It's everybody else's fault. And just, you know, I think that some of these organizations have the money. They have the money to spend. They have special interest groups. Use it to make us look good.
Okay.
You know?
Well, general public, I'm going to weigh in on another thing that you can do, because as you're watching this series, I hope that you are learning about the working conditions. So think about the job that you go to every day. You don't have to deal with a lot of the things that truckers have to deal with. And specifically women truckers. I don't know. Again, it completely makes my mind melt to try to grasp the fact that sexual harassment, workplace violence, and rape are essentially tolerated in this industry. And one of the largest things that could help all of the truckers to include the issues with trucking, to include standardized training criteria and things of that nature, is making sure that you, because you, the general public, are our voters. And you know what? You can send letters to your representation asking to improve these conditions. You can raise your voice, and you can join with Real Women in Trucking to learn more about the issues, but then also help to amplify the issue, because truckers have been in their industry, and they know what's going on, and they've always known what's going on. The fact that there's no federal involvement or oversight is because you and I, we regular consumers, unless you know a trucker, you really don't know. So you need to start using your individual power as citizens to raise your voice on behalf of our trucker brothers and sisters, because again, without them, there's not a single thing that you have in your home, in your workspace, in any space that you exist, with the exception of the forest where the trees just grow naturally, that was not transported by a truck. So we're going to switch over. We've done the heavy stuff, and I really enjoy. You've taught me so much more and helped me shape my opinion so much more as I go out and have conversations with just everyday people that I interact with. So I like to close, or like to kind of wind down with some fun questions, because yes, the topic is heavy. What goes on in the trucking industry is heavy, but it is also one of the most unique industries I've ever heard of. So now the next few questions are going to be fun questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So tell me, what's the most unique load you've ever hauled?
Man, I don't know that I've hauled anything super unique. Like, I've seen some unique stuff, but not really hauled any.
Okay, well, what have you seen that's been unique?
Well, I've seen, remember there used to be a squirrel that water skied? Saw him in his truck. They used to have a Shamu truck. I think it was Shamu. It was one of the killer whales. It was a big tank. You could see him on a flatbed. I mean, it was a built. I've seen some things going down the road that there's a place in Oklahoma that has camels, or he used to. There's a place in North Dakota that's got a camel. There's a zebra farm in Oklahoma that might be gone. Just weird stuff, just stuff.
Okay. Well, when you're doing your long, well, when you were over the road and doing your long hours in the truck, and even on your regular days in the truck, what's one thing you do that brings you joy?
I have a dog. He's right here.
I saw him poking up. What's your dog's name?
My dog's name is Caper.
Hi, Caper. Come on. Come on. We'd like to meet you. Tell us about Caper.
Yeah. Well, we were all going on a cruise, a bunch of us from the organization, and I drove down to New Orleans, and Desiree hooked me up. Adele and I stayed at a bed and breakfast of one of Desiree's friends, and she had a place called Bark and Breakfast. And about 2 days before I left the house, she's like, "Oh, you want a little dog?" I'm like, "What?" So she sent me this picture, and then she had him there when we got there. And then we went on the cruise, and then we didn't even hit the port hardly, and she's texting me, "Yeah, do you want him? Do you want him?" I'm like, "Yes." So I took Idella home. So we went over and got him. But come here, come here, come here. You gonna stand up? There you are. There you are. Come here. Come see. Come see.
What?
Come here. Come here. There you are. Here's my
Hello,
boy.
Caper. Oh, you're a cutie. Hello. Oh, I'm so glad he brings you joy.
My buddy. We do
So,
everything.
I love him. So I have kept you for a little over an hour. And I really enjoy, like I said, I always enjoy having opportunities to get to know each of you ladies because I interact with you all digitally. So this is my first opportunity to kind of meet you, put a face with an email address, and get to learn more about your stories and your experiences. And one of the things that I want to make sure that I do in every interaction that I have when we are in the same space and I can see you and you can see me is to tell you thank you.
Well,
Thank
thank
you
you. I appreciate it.
so much for transporting goods and services. I can think of, I mean, just my grocery list. If I wouldn't have groceries, and I know that the conditions, especially during COVID, were difficult. But I appreciate the fact that I could still Instacart or DoorDash what I needed if I couldn't get out of the house for any reason. And even outside of COVID, I've always had the comfort of going to a store, and more often than not, the thing that I wanted was on the shelf. The only thing that would determine whether it was or wasn't was whether the store had enough inventory. But that had absolutely nothing to do with the fact that truckers were still driving up and down the roads, down our highways and byways, making sure that we have the goods, the products, the services, the raw materials, you can name it, and we need it. They are making sure it gets to where they need to go. And I don't think people thank you guys enough. So from the
Well, I
bottom of my
appreciate it.
heart, thank you. Do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
I just I welcome the public having knowledge of what goes on in our industry, good, bad, but without that knowledge, we're not going to advance. And the system's going towards autonomous, but probably not in my lifetime. I mean, they say it, but I can't even get my windshield wipers to work half the time. So, so just the public taking an interest and knowing that we get the blame for a lot. It's not really our fault. We're being we're being controlled by the government and the big shippers and receivers, and we don't have any control over commerce really. And so when they say we're having a supply chain crisis, even though it involves us, there's nothing we can do. I mean, just the public having knowledge that most of us get up in the morning to do our job and to do it safely. And we're not out here trying to intentionally screw up anything or wreck anything or drive over your lawn with our trailer or anything, those weren't our intentions when we got up this morning, so most of us try and do our best. So
Absolutely. Well, thank you for those wise words, Miss Michelle. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another edition of Real Women in Trucking with board member Michelle Kitchen. Just because you guys need to know it, if you Google Real Women in Trucking, you can connect with us on all of the social media platforms that exist. And we also have a website, www.realwomenintrucking.org. If you are a trucker and you want to connect with this organization, that's the same place that you would go to connect. You can actually email us if you have questions, comments, or concerns at info@Real Women in Trucking. And we're so happy to have you. Guys, we're going to say good night or good day or good whatever time of day it is to you. And we'll catch you next time.